Welcome to Focus on Why, the podcast where reflection sparks action. I'm Amy Rowlandson, and together we'll explore compelling stories, profound insights, and transformative experiences from inspiring guests worldwide. Feeling lost or unfulfilled? Searching for clarity, purpose, or meaning in your work and life? This podcast invites you on a journey of self-discovery to align your work with your values, shape your future with intention, and create a purposeful way of life. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Before we dive in, let me share how I can transform your journey as a purpose coach. I specialise in helping you get crystal clear on your why, aligning your passion with your purpose, and crafting a plan to create the life you truly desire. Book a free 30-minute coaching call today. The link is in the show notes. Let's start building your purposeful future together. Today on Focus on Why, I am joined by Catherine Watkin. Hello and welcome.
Hello, it's great to be here again.
Well, you say again because you are indeed a returning guest all the way back from, it was in June, July 2021 that we recorded that first episode, which is 187. But we are going to start from scratch today and ask the question, what is it you're focusing on right now, Catherine?
Well, what I'm focusing on right now is poles apart from what I was focusing on when we spoke 4 years ago, because my main focus at the moment is actually a very personal focus in that I'm focusing on healing and recovery from a health condition that I've had for about 18 years, but only recently had the diagnosis and started treatment. So I'm very focused on putting that first as far as I can, given that I run a business and I have a life that goes on. But if you were to ask me what my core one thing priority would be right now, it's health and healing.
So focusing on health and healing, and you mentioned there that it's something that you've been experiencing for 18 years, and yet you've just had a diagnosis. How does it feel to finally be understood or feel that your body has been understood by someone to help treat it?
It feels really good to finally understand the root cause. I'm not so sure that I've been understood by anybody out there. This is still something that isn't well understood by the conventional medical profession. And I was very, very lucky to find an alternative practitioner who was able to identify it. And then I went off and I did my research, and suddenly it was like all the lights came on, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have been undiagnosed for all of these years.
And that sort of alternative search from the, is it allopathic medicine? Is that the traditional medicine that we have? And yeah, so going alternative and exploring different routes, what led you on that journey?
So I'm 55 now, and when I was in my early 30s, I started experiencing fatigue. I was working in the city in London. I was feeling tired all the time. When you're in your early 30s in the city of London and you start feeling tired all the time, you think, well, actually, obviously, I need to go to the gym more and I need to take more Berocca and all these things. But that was the beginning for me of a very long and gradual deterioration in my health that ultimately would have had a diagnosis of ME, chronic fatigue syndrome. But I left the conventional medical world before that could happen. I just reached a point where I knew that this wasn't going in a way that was going to be positive for me. Because had I had that diagnosis, the medical advice then is, well, there is no cure. You've just got to learn to live with it. So about 15 years, probably about more than 15 years ago, I started exploring lots of different alternative routes, but started seeing an alternative practitioner regularly about 15 years ago and haven't really returned to conventional medicine since then.
And it is that sort of just learn to live with it perspective that as women, we have had to deal with this in terms of there isn't as much research done for women on various areas. And so, yes, there is a limited resource of what can be achieved as a result. But now you're saying that you're on this path of recovery and healing, because it sounds like it's more than just the physical health that's been affected.
Yeah, it has. So that was however long ago, I'd say, 18 years ago when I started having symptoms. I then went through a long drawn out period of recovery and had about a 4 or 5 year period where I was living a relatively normal life. And then 5 years ago, I started to deteriorate again. And that this last 5 years in particular has been particularly difficult because it was mid 2020 where I started getting symptoms. At that point, I had a successful business. I'd spent 8 years, 8 or 9 years growing that business. I had a membership that was thriving. I was very focused on growing the membership. I had a vision of growing to 1,000 members. I had a course that I ran every year, and the business felt like it was really on the up. And I was very driven and motivated to grow this business. I was working a lot, but I was working a lot through choice because it was my passion, it was my purpose. And when this last 5 years of health issues hit me, it derailed all of that. And so it's had an effect of knocking my confidence. I feel that my ego got knocked right out of me because there was no space left for an ego when I felt that I was struggling day by day. And so, yes, there's been the health struggle, but the impact on my ability to work and function as I did before, my ability to socialize, my ability to maintain relationships. I've lost important friendships during that period. It's been like this complete process of letting go and things falling away, but none of it through choice. All of it because I was unable to function at a level that could hold a normal life together. And so now that I'm in recovery and recovering, it's like I now get to choose how I put it all back together. And as I said to you before we started recording, there's almost a crisis of identity because I was that person in mid 2020 before this particular health issue happened. And I know the date coincides with COVID, but it wasn't COVID. And then I'm now emerging 5 years later. Well, who is this version that I am now? Having had that experience where I've had so much of what made me knocked out of me.
And it is interesting, this very clear dichotomy of having a choice and not having a choice, and the freedom that you now have to choose who Catherine now is and what Catherine does and who Catherine is in terms of an external version and an internal version, because there's lots going on here. That letting go that you were forced to because of the inability to function from a health perspective has also now allowed you this new version to step up. And yeah, it sounds very much like you're in this liminal space of uncertainty, but also an excitement because you get to choose what to do next. There are opportunities available. So which route and which path are you going to carve?
And before we started recording, I'd confided in you, this is a podcast about purpose. Is this the right time to record a podcast? Because right now I don't feel I have a purpose beyond my health recovery. This is my sole focus right now. And I feel like you used the word liminal because what will unfold for me beyond this? And I still have my purpose in my business. I still love the work that I do, helping small business owners grow their businesses. But that even there, the purpose there has shifted to be more personal. It's become more about how do I want my life to be? How do I want my life to feel? It's not so much about reaching large numbers of people and having a big impact and making as much money as possible. It's whereas 5 years ago I was still very much in that growing phase and wanting to reach much larger numbers of people.
And so, this shift into understanding what brings more meaning to your life, knowing that you want to have a sustainable lifestyle because your focus is on health. How do you define success now?
I think for me, what I've learned absolutely the hard way, with no shadow of a doubt, that the only thing that really matters in life is our health. And you can only know that. Some people listening will relate to this. You can only know that if you've lived without your health for a period of time. Because without health, you can't have a business. You can't maintain a good relationship. You can't spend time with friends. You can't go on holiday. It's not that you can't financially, it's because for me, I just haven't had, yes, I've gone on holiday. I've flown myself somewhere and lay on a sun lounger for a week and flown myself home again. It's not quite the same. And so for me, success for me for the rest of my life will be being well enough to enjoy my life, whatever that then entails. And it means that things like business success, financial success, they're still important to me. But I feel like I will always be very clear that as long as I have my health, I could have none of that. I could do the most basic job, 9 to 5, come home, and I will have a better quality of life because I'm present and able to enjoy my days day by day than if I'm running a massive business, but I'm exhausted, brain fogged, barely able to function all day, every day. And it's the quality of the moments of the day, the quality of the moments of the day, day by day, which you can't have if you're. I'm very lucky I haven't experienced pain, but if you're in permanent pain, if you're in permanent fatigue, if you're in permanent brain fog, if you're in permanent anything that prevents you functioning well, you're not available to be fully present to enjoy life in moment by moment like that.
And this is what I'm hearing, this moment by moment. There is a slowing down that I'm hearing instead of the desire to speed and grow and to move forward at pace. It is just a case of taking each day as it comes. And so the shift in timelines for you has changed.
Yeah, and who's to say, because we're in the liminal, who's to say that as my health continues to improve, I'm 4 months into treatment and it's going amazingly. Who's to say that I'm not going to get back into pace and speed and find, growth, whether it's recommitting to growing the business or something else that I get excited about? It's very possible that that part of me is going to come back through, but I think I will always be conscious of I'm absolutely not willing to sacrifice my health for success at any level again, ever. I'm not willing to engage in overwork and burnout and all those patterns that I used to run.
How have you managed the ego element? Because you said before that it got knocked and your confidence got knocked. How is it you're managing that now?
I feel like I've become accepting. And this for me is one of the really important lessons around my health journey has been around acceptance of what is. But for the first few years, I didn't accept what is. And even though I was really struggling with my health, I was also struggling to push, still trying to grow the business, still trying to operate in the way that I operated before. And I actually had someone worked with me, helping me run the business. And she would regularly remind me that I could only operate within the reality that I had. And it was so valuable to me to come to really understand this is, for whatever reason, this is the path that I've been given. This is the reality that I have. All the fighting, all the pushing, all the overworking isn't going to change this. And this has been a 5-year period. And I do feel that I've reached a place where, on the whole, I accept that I'm not as, in quotes, successful in some ways as there's a parallel Catherine out there who didn't get sick in the last 5 years. And that parallel Catherine is living in a very different way with very different markers of success than the one who has been. And so while there's been acceptance, there's also been a lot of grief and mourning for the loss of my ability to achieve that vision and become, we talk about achieving our full potential. And sometimes we don't achieve our full potential for no real reason of our own. And I feel that there's been a mourning or a grieving and then an accepting of the loss of that aspect of myself, the person who was going to go out and achieve all that and that was on a track towards it before I started to get sick the second time around.
And it's interesting because you say that there's this successful parallel Catherine out there who has very different markers. However, I am of a great belief that we do shift in life and we understand that what matters to us in one decade will evolve and not matter as much and shift as we grow and we accept the different ages that we are experiencing. And this is from my perspective quite a common occurrence in this part, to be shedding an identity that's no longer serving you. And in that, it is not a comfortable space. It's not easy. We haven't done this before. We don't know what's coming. And that uncertainty of the unknown is difficult to navigate, because how can you plan when you don't know who that version is? But you have a very clear filter of, is this going to affect my health? Is this going to compromise my health? And that is a great one to, for you to be able to plan and to move forward for now until you know and you have a better clarity of what's going on. So yeah, the purpose is ever evolving.
Yeah. And it's interesting as well when you talk about those markers of success, because when I first started my business, I'd been in all the seminars and all the courses, and I did what I was supposed to do and I grew my six-figure business. And then I was all set to do what you're supposed to do next. They all say once you've done your six figures, you've got to grow your seven-figure business. And I really, truly believed that that was possible. And I really, truly believed that that was my future. Now, of course, I haven't achieved more than a multi six-figure business. Now, some people would say that is successful, but it just wasn't successful against the marker of where I thought I was going. But when I look back now at the last 5 years, I can see a different type of success, which is, look at how unwell I've been and look at how much time I've taken off. And yet I still have a business and I still have a thriving membership and I still have a course that I run every year and I still have private clients. I still have a team that supports me. My business still pays for me to live. I still pay myself a salary every month out of that business. Now that's also success. The fact that I'd got a business to a point where, even with that much time off and even with that much time struggling to be effective when I was at work, that the business is still running. And then that in itself, I look at that and I think, well, I did some good things in that first 10 years for that to be the case.
You absolutely did. And this is what's is so interesting here, Catherine. And it's so valuable that you're sharing this sort of navigation that you've been experiencing over the last few years, but also the retrospective understanding and reflection that you've been patient and forgiving enough to do. Because you could be beating yourself up saying, I'm not where I want to be, and this is really frustrating, and I really should have been here. However, with this, again, the filter of actually health matters more than anything, because where are we going to live if we don't have our physical vessel to take us around the world and do what we want to do? It is important that we actually respect that those markers do change. Those, what success means is not necessarily societal perspectives, and that we do have the choice to put in place what matters to us as individuals. And it is so important that we do that. Otherwise, we will always feel we are falling short from what we think we should be doing.
Yeah. And also, interestingly, like as you said, it maybe I'm at the point in my life where I would be shifting and changing what I want anyway. But for me, I am so much more my old self. There's no reason to think that I won't be fully my old self by the end of this year. Now, I have no intention of going back and picking up that old vision of the seven-figure business. It's not even it doesn't even appeal to me anymore. There's other things that I want. I love my business, but I want my business to feel more streamlined, more sustainable. I want more space. I don't want to work at the pace I used to work anymore. I want to work at a slower pace. I want sense of more space in my days. Yeah, and so I want to I love the core of my business and the business model and the clients that I work with, and I don't want to change any of that. But I do feel that my ambitions have changed, and the way that I operate, the way that I want to operate in the business has also changed.
And you mentioned earlier about flying yourself out to a sunny place and lying on a sunbed and then flying yourself back. This is a lifestyle business that you've created for you and for you alone. So you haven't had to necessarily factor in other people.
No, and do you know what? This is also why the business still exists, because it is just me. So on the one hand, I don't have any dependents. I haven't had to worry about, mind you, at my age, my if I did, they'd have left home by now anyway. But on the other side of that, I don't have a partner. I didn't have anybody to buffer me. And so for me to have let the business go, I think most people, many times I have reflected and I've thought most people would have let the business go during this time period. But I've always thought, but what if I recover? And if I recover, then where will I be? And because I didn't have somebody to buffer me if I was to give up work, I've carried on, and I'm so glad that I did, because I'm coming through the other side and I do still have the business, which gives me my livelihood.
And it's so interesting because, yes, you've managed to maintain a business that has carried you through at a very difficult time on your own. And what I'm hearing is this absolute faith that you could do that. So yes, you said you lost your confidence and it knocked your ego, but not in this space. Maybe from an external perspective of who's Catherine from an external perspective, but not in the actual running of it.
It definitely knocked my confidence in the running of it, but you would have only seen it behind the scenes. But there were quite a few times where I did feel like a fraud. And I remember running launches. I run launches to sell my programs. I'm very good at running launches. I bring people in, I enroll them. And I remember one year feeling like I can't do this. And I remembered how I used to do it, and I pretended to be me. And I thought, they're all going to notice. Everyone's going to feel the energy's off, because I'm not really feeling good in myself. I'm not feeling good about myself. I'm just pretending because I know how I normally do it. And it still worked. And that was quite eye-opening for me. Well, I'm back. I have just run a launch. That was completely me. I wasn't pretending. But there were, in that time frame, quite a lot of long stretches of time when I did feel like a fraud and I felt like an imposter, even though I'd been in business for over a decade, and just hoping that the clients didn't notice. And of course they didn't notice, because I was still really, really good at what I do. So it was internal feelings of inadequacy rather than anything external. But in some ways I'm not alone, because I have a team and I have some really, really strong support, and they knew. So I had a team that really did see the true lows, and would see how I was able to somehow pick myself up and get out there and do what I needed to do, and then retreat again.
Thank you for sharing, because it's so valuable that you just shared what you did, because there's so many times when there's this veneer that is seen from an outer perspective of everything's great and, oh my goodness, the business is so successful again. You know, what measures are people using? I have no idea, but everyone has a judgment that they're making. When you said you pretended to be you, I'm really curious in terms of, you're delivering a program that you knew inside out in terms of the content. You were not delivering anything different, were you? It was things that you knew.
No, and interestingly, when it comes to delivery, I've never really doubted that piece, my ability to bring my eyes on somebody's business and help them grow it and tweak it. I've always had that somehow. But this was me running running launches, getting people into 1 week experience events, running webinars, needing to be really inspirational and high energy to enroll people in, feeling honestly like I was at the lowest of the low, and that I was, I should just be high, I just be crawling, never mind under the duvet, I should be under the bed. and needing to show up and inspire people to come and join me in my programs. And that was the bit that felt like it was fraudulent because I wasn't feeling good in myself and I wasn't feeling confident in myself. I still believed I had the ability to help them with their businesses, but this is about me presenting myself as being a successful business owner myself when I felt anything but successful because I was struggling so much with my day to day health. And my health issues, I should stress, affected me mentally. So the physical health issues had a mental health component. So there was a lot of struggle with mental health. Meanwhile, I'm trying to put hold a great space for other people to grow and grow their businesses. And so that was the piece. And yet it was remembering what was Catherine like when she did believe in herself, when she did feel good about herself, and acting as if I was that person. And it worked.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that the brain doesn't discern between what's imagined and what's real. So the visualization and the process that you put yourself in there does trick you into feeling differently and being able to operate in a different model. It's why it works so well for sports people to visualize the race and take themselves through that mentally. But again, I really admire your honesty here, and I'm very grateful that you shared it because it will be of value to hear for others who feel that they are struggling and that, oh, is it just me? Does anyone else have this? Because it can be that this is not something that is shared publicly.
Yeah. And it's not, and it's not easy stuff to share in the moment of. I can sit here and talk to you about this today because I am myself again. And I'm now talking with the benefit of hindsight. But I couldn't have done this podcast and talked about and I couldn't have done this podcast and shared some of these things when I was still in it because it would have felt too vulnerable and too raw. And if I share this, people will be able to see me for what I really am, which is I'm struggling. Now, I was struggling, but I'm open about that now. And I have a membership. Some of my membership have been in my membership for 8 years. I run a behind the scenes session every month and I do share about the health journey. So they know that I've struggled, but it evidently doesn't impact people's belief in the fact that I can help them with their businesses because they're still with me.
I love that phrase behind the scenes. It'll probably be the title for the episode because it does represent, from a metaphor perspective, what's going on and in the body, in the mind, and in the business, what is actually happening beneath what is being seen. And that disconnect sometimes can be so disruptive, can be so impossible to push and to against, to force through, as you were saying right at the beginning. You couldn't. You had to just say, right, I need to put the brakes on here and I need to respect what I'm being told and observe that. And what I'm hearing, again, is this lesson that with hindsight, yes, it's easy to speak about this now, but should it happen again, you'll be able to, I'd hope you would be able to, and others will feel empowered to speak up and get the help that they need and not feel so vulnerable when this is going on.
Yeah. And I think as someone who's lived through it, it's a difficult one because when it affects our mental health, we, we it when it affects our mental health, it's not easy to want to share that and reach out. And I'm a naturally very positive, very forward focused person. I'm a bit of a Pollyanna. It gets my Pollyanna nature and my belief that everything's going to work out perfectly is probably one of my biggest weaknesses in some way. So I know that I'm naturally optimistic, possibility focused, forward focused. But when this illness affected my mental health, I was severely depressed and severely anxious. I felt unconfident. I felt not good enough. I felt like a fraud. I felt like, why would anybody even want to be friends with me? All of this stuff came up. And when we're in that mode, it feels so real. It doesn't feel like an illness. It feels like the truth. It feels like reality. And when that's what reality feels like, we don't tend to want tell the world that that's what we're feeling like. And that's one of the difficulties, I think, for people who struggle with mental health, is that when we're really in it, it's not easy to share. When we most need to share, it's not easy to share.
Yeah. And the very wise words that your colleague or your one of your team mentioned to you in terms of what was the reality, what was going on for you, and for you to actually only operate within the reality you had. The fact that that was this reality that you just shared of filled with anxiety and depression and believing that that is the truth and the reality, that you didn't have a choice for it to be anything else, not necessarily even believing, but just feeling that that was what was going on. What would you do to help yourself before you got to that space again?
So, in my particular case, there was an underlying physical root cause. So, the only answer I can give to that now is that I would have my injection because I now know how to fix the underlying root cause. Um, I haven't really experienced mental health issues that were not caused by a physical component. So, in that respect, I think I'm fortunate. But one of the things that I did use to learn to remind myself is to try in those moments to remind myself that this isn't real, that I've been here before, and that there is a very different alternative, and to remind myself this isn't real, this isn't true. The downside of that is when those days go on for long enough, you're so far removed from the memory of when it wasn't like this that it does actually start to become a real reality. And when that happens, not every friend wants to stay around.
There is a paradox because you said you had to become accepting of what is, and yet also challenge what is. So there is this, again, the sort of, what is the truth? What is just a thought that you can let go of, and it's not, it's a story you're telling yourself, versus actually what is a reality here? It's difficult.
Yeah, and there's also like accepting the reality in the day to day. So if I'm so unwell that I can get up and I can do a certain amount of easy work in the morning and then I need to go back to bed for the afternoon, as an example. The reality there is that I'm not going to grow a seven-figure business from being in that state. That was be my reality, and my brain not functioning properly, lots of brain fog. But at the same time, it's not about laying back in a sort of defeated way, going, "Oh, well, I accept then this is the way my life is going to be," because I didn't ever stop seeking solutions. I didn't ever stop fighting to get answers. I didn't ever stop seeking solutions. And I need to sit down and work it out at some point soon, because I think that in the last 15 years, I've spent in excess of 100,000 just on my health recovery. Most of it was wasted, as it now turns out, because the one single thing that it was is it is incredibly inexpensive. But I didn't ever stop seeking the solutions. So on the one hand, accepting day by day that this is the path I've been given, this is the life, these are the cards I've been dealt. It's healthier, it's less painful, it's less miserable to actually accept that and work within that. And at the same time, never giving up, not giving up the business because I believed that I would recover, and never stopping looking for and paying for that next answer, cure, solution until I finally found it.
Yeah, I love that. The understanding that there is always a solution at some point, and it's just a case of not necessarily having found it yet, but that what you're doing, the steps you're taking, and this is where the purpose comes back in, that because health is the purpose for you, to understand that that's the priority, everything gets filtered through it. Are these steps I'm taking today going to take me closer to achieving my purpose of living this healthy life that I have?
Yeah. And of course, as I recover, it starts to slip again. Have I prioritized my health in the last 2 months? No, I haven't. I've been like really busy. I saw you at a conference the other month. I went to do a speaking gig here and masterclasses everywhere. I ran a big launch. And I've neglected my health for a couple of months, really, because I've been well enough to do it. And it's like, okay, it's this. And now I'm refocusing this month on this absolute discipline. I'm on this healing journey and I need to refocus on this healing because it is everything. It is actually all that I have. And if I had no business and I had no financial success and I had no money, I've got my camper van. If you're healthy, you can have almost nothing and still have a really good quality of life. You can live in a hut, you can live in a van, but if you don't have your health, you can't enjoy life at all.
And this is, again, as I said, the chapter of life that we start to look at when we're in this 50s space of what really matters, what constitutes for me the things that I want to spend the most time on. And where you said that you did compromise on your health, those are the things that you value to gives you an indication of what you're choosing to risk, because it was about meeting people again and re-establishing relationships and being in a space where you do get a lot of energy from being in their company. So it's interesting that those elements that you will risk the compromise are, again, really clear for you of what really matters.
Yeah. And being very conscious as well, I think before this period of health coincided in a very coincidental way with me moving to a new part of the country where I don't know anybody and I live a very, very quiet life. It was supposed to be for 1 month, but that was when the health issues started. And I ended up getting stuck and I'm still here. And and for me, what this means is that as I recover, I get the choice to be very discerning about what I do and don't allow back into my life. Because before this, I was living in London. I moved out of my London flat in mid 2020. Now, up until that point, like lockdown came as such a huge relief to me because I was so busy. I was running the business, I was going out to lunch with friends, I was if being invited to this thing, I'd go, that business event, I'd go. And I don't even think I was conscious about whether I was enjoying my life at all. I was just trying to keep up. And this combination of the health issues having pulled my life back into a very small, limited space, combined with living in an area where I don't know people, means that as I recover, I now get to choose what really is important and what I let back into my life. And I don't ever want to be that busy again. Much as I might have loved the people that I went for lunch with, and you would have been somebody that I went for dinner with, I would not want to fill my life with so many commitments and appointments. I've really learned to enjoy my alone time, and I spend a lot of time alone, and it's what I choose to do, and I want to keep that.
Again, it's so interesting, isn't it, that there is this letting go conscious now, whereas before, and I mentioned it before when you said that you were unable to hold a normal life, so you had to let things go, but without the choice. And yet, sometimes I feel that our body knows best and it does show up in ways that we're not listening. It will really start to talk very loudly. And one of my previous guests, Ruth Fogg, she says, what the mind suppresses, the body expresses. And this is certainly a case of that for you.
Yeah, and this sort of letting go, but it not consciously letting go of everything, and but letting go of most things, but not the business. Not doing it consciously or not doing it through choice, but then actually realizing that it's the perfect thing because I now get to prioritize what's really important to me going forward.
Catherine, it's been such a rewarding episode from my perspective, because often I have people who come on and they're talking about how successful they are and how things have gone really well, and yet actually it doesn't always necessarily reflect the true life. Absolutely, I've had a lot of people who share their catalysts of what have created a more purposeful way of life for them, and they've got great clarity. But here we are also talking about what's gone well, what's not gone so well, and yet there might not always be clarity. And that's something that's really important here, is that as long as you are honoring your values and what matters most, the clarity of purpose will come as a result of that. But it's not always as obvious and as revealing as it can be. But what it does show is that you create it. It's not something that you find and search for externally. It's created and felt from within. And yet, here we are, and where you're in this liminal space, and it's just the beginning of what that is next. So I just want to say thank you for sharing.
Thank you. And I think I want to say as well that as you're talking, I'm reflecting on purpose. And to some extent, I have my purpose and I already live my purpose and I've managed to maintain that, much as it has been difficult at times. But I have a business that I love, that I am really gifted at what I do. Um, I realized recently that I had definitely done my 10,000 hours, which Malcolm Gladwell talks about in the book Outliers, of mastery of something. And I have this thing that I get to do for my living that I am really, really good at. I do it with the most beautiful people. My community is heart-centered business owners, and the fact that I use that word attracts the most beautiful people to my world. I only interact with really fabulous people all day, every day, and I get to do this from home to my own schedule in my own time. Now, there's an element there that sometimes too much time alone isn't necessarily a good thing, but I've managed to maintain that even through this period where I've really struggled with my health. And maybe I'm taking it for granted a little bit too much that I already have found my purpose, and it took me years of seeking to find this purpose. Really far, I think our last podcast, we talked about how many years of seeking it had taken me to find the business that I have now. And I'm underestimating that I found my purpose. And I think just because we find our purpose, I think people are always so excited about finding their purpose that maybe we underestimate the fact that maybe you can find your purpose and that purpose might still be your purpose 15 years later, and that's okay.
And this is the very specific shift from language that you don't find it, you created it. You created the business that you're around the topic that you are very much interested in, using your skills and your strengths and your passions, folding that all together. Yes, you navigated and you explored different routes, but you came into the understanding of folding over all these different elements and you created it. And that's the difference between the finding and the seeking, is that you'll go on this search forever if you think that you're just going to stumble across it, whereas actually you had the ability to create it the whole time.
Yeah.
So, Catherine, thank you for sharing and for coming on the show again. It's been a real delight. How best should people connect with you? What's your preferred way for doing that?
So the main way of reaching me is actually through my business, which is called Selling from the Heart. And the website is sellingfromtheheart.com. And that's usually the best way to find me. I'm also on social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. It's Catherine Watkin, specific spelling, but I know you'll put that up somewhere. So yeah, those are the best ways to find me.
Absolutely. All those details are in the show notes. So, thank you. Again, what a joy. And it's been a real heartfelt, heart centered conversation. So, thank you for that. How would you like to close out the episode? Your final words.
I think it would be just to repeat the phrase again, is the acceptance of what is. I see so many of my clients struggling with things in their lives, very similarly, things like, I can't get my business to be as successful as I'd like because I have this commitment or that challenge or this neurodiversity or, all of the different challenges that we have. And I see people fighting against their reality and almost fighting to be different somehow. But actually, if we can accept our reality, whatever that is, our health issues, our family commitments, it might be our family members that are not well. It might be financial challenges, it might be neurodiverse challenges. I'm autistic, and that's actually been a really big part of my journey as well, but was not something we've talked about today. That If we come from accepting the reality of what is and what cannot be changed, I think life becomes so much more enjoyable because I think we make ourselves miserable trying to change reality. And sometimes we can make changes, but it was like me saying, on the one hand, I can accept that this is the way it is, and at the same time, I can work towards changing it.
This episode's over, but let's keep the conversation going. How has this episode impacted you? Share your insights, takeaways, and reflections with actions on social media, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Your feedback creates powerful ripple effects, helping others to discover its value. Want to dive deeper into purpose? Check the show notes for links on how to work with me, where to buy my new book, Focus on Why, Create a Purposeful Way of Life, available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook, and where to sign up for Friday Focus, my weekly newsletter. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.